if a tax filer, if a private citizen willfully concealed or manipulated a tax document, would that be considered a form of tax fraud?
Yeah, that based on the way you described it, if they willfully manipulated to misdirect or misreport, that could be considered tax evasion.
And the penalty for that could be a fine up to $250,000 and up to 5 years in prison. Is that correct?
Well, each case
and for
differs, but the
business, it could be up to $500,000 and 5 years in prison. Let me ask you this. If government auditors were similarly found to be backdating or manipulating tax forms of private citizens, would that also be considered a form of tax fraud?
It's concerning.
No, I ask you a direct question. If a private citizen altered information on a tax document, whether it's a date or a signature from a supervisor, it would be considered tax fraud and it would be prosecuted. It is a felony. They could have to pay up to $250,000 in fines and they could serve up to 5 years in prison. So what are the penalties for IRS employees who do the same thing and possibly jeopardize a private citizen on their tax filing? So what's the penalty?
Yeah, there should be accountability.
Yeah, but what, no, what is the penalty?
If you'll allow me to elaborate, I can elaborate.
Yeah, I don't want a long answer. I want you to tell me what is the penalty.
Well, there is no specific penalty. It depends on the circumstances, and it does depend on the circumstances with the taxpayers as well.
The Wall Street Journal reported on this. You're in court right now, Lake Point 2 LLC versus commissioner. The commissioner would be you, for where you had people who falsified documents. And that's not the only one. So did anybody get fired?
Let me tell you what's going on.
Did anybody get fired?
We are looking into the appropriate personnel.
Okay,
matters.
well,
We're
anyone
the
get
right
fired?
process.
Well, if you find they did this intentionally, and the documents indicate they did, because there's an email chain, and maybe, Madam Chairman, Mr. Chairman, we need to investigate this on behalf of the taxpayers, because I have major concerns about the tax gap, major concerns. The biggest problem with the tax code is its complexity. We need a simpler tax code, and I think we would collect more taxes rather than audit people, rather than manipulate tax documents so that somewhere down the line somebody who filed a legal, accurate tax return doesn't face a tax bill and potentially a penalty because somebody at the IRS falsified the document. So there's got to be some penalties.
Yeah, I can assure you, Congressman, we are taking steps to correct the record, to make the taxpayer whole, in any of those situations, and they are extremely limited, that we are taking all the right steps and all the right procedures to make sure that that situation is corrected.
Will anybody
if there's any
be
accountability,
fired?
we will follow the right procedures to ensure accountability.
Will anybody be fired? If they're, thank you.
I'm not going to comment on an employee process.
If you find out that it was done intentionally, as the evidence indicates, keeping in mind the severity of the penalties that are imposed on private citizens, the least that anybody can expect is that someone be dismissed from their job. And I hate to say that because I hate to fire anybody. The consequences for their families. But think about the lack of trust that the American people have in the IRS and put that first and foremost. I yield back.